This is the
Spotty Podcast,
where we illuminate the world of parenting children with autism. I'm CJ, a proud dad to a wonderful 6-year-old with autism. Through my journey, I've discovered the challenges, triumphs, and unique experiences that come with raising a child on the spectrum. Inspired by those experiences, I created this space where parents like you can find understanding, share stories, and learn from each other. Join me as we explore insights, strategies, and support, all while celebrating the brighter spectrum of our children's lives. Now, let's dive in and cast light on this path together. Joining me today, we sit down with Joanna Flora, owner of a group practice in Sparta, New Jersey, who's been an active therapist for the last 13 years. At the age of 7, she potty trained her little brother, and since has had a passion for working with families and children. Joanna, thank you so much for joining me today.
Thank you so much for having me. I'm so excited to be here.
Yeah, we're excited to have you. And honestly, I'm really glad that we're doing this episode as early on in this series of the show as we are, because I'm in several autism support groups on Facebook, and it seems like potty training is a massive thing that gets talked about all the time in between like how to manage meltdowns and stuff. I think the top 3 things that I see is managing meltdowns, potty training, and getting them to sleep in their own beds. So I'm actually really glad to have you on to talk about this today.
No, it's a huge topic, and I think it's something that so many people are afraid of, and they don't need to be. So I'm really glad to be able to help as many families as possible.
Hey, and we're glad to have people like you out there. I'm right now struggling right now to get my little man to use the potty, and this morning for the very first time he stood to pee in the potty, which I think
Wow.
which I think is going to be like the key. I think he needs to feel like a big boy, but doesn't have the ability to communicate that to me yet. So, hey, if that's what's going to take you to get to pee in the potty, that's fine by me. I'll throw a Cheerio in there for you to aim at if I need to, whatever.
Yeah, definitely. Definitely.
Um.
Go ahead.
Oh no, you go ahead. Go ahead.
I was going to say use a goldfish more than a Cheerio. Goldfish tend to be a little bit more motivating for some reason.
Okay. Yeah, I have
Yeah.
plenty of those in the house. It's a favorite snack here, so I just hope he doesn't reach in and try to eat it because I threw it in there. Let's kick off the show a little bit. Can we get a little more background about you, maybe about your experience with kids with autism, your own family? Like, tell us what's going on with you.
Sure. Okay. So I actually am a creative arts therapist. So that's how I started my career way back when. But while I was in undergrad, I actually had the opportunity to work with a bunch of children on the autism spectrum. Fell in love with one family whose child was medically fragile and wasn't able to go to school. And I was really able to go into their home 3 days a week and do individualized plans on all types of life skills and all kinds of skills. But the most meaningful, I think, to me was really teaching him how to toilet independently as he was 16 years old and not able to toilet, and still having all these support staffs and aides and nannies helping him in the bathroom. And I just felt like that's not fair. We're not giving him a sense of privacy. We're not giving him a sense of like manlyhood. There's nothing age appropriately happening here. And so I just jumped right in, and that's how I started potty training. And I fell in love with working with individuals with developmental disabilities, including girls with Rett syndrome as well, and realized that they had a lot of toileting issues as well. And most of those girls, especially the ones in wheelchairs, were in diapers. So I really started creating some individualized plans to give these families and these children privacy and ownership over their own bodies. And that's what made me want to be an art therapist for kids with developmental disabilities. So I started my career, and it was really hard to get the appropriate clients for my office. It was just really hard. Most people don't even know what art therapy is. So I just really did some art therapy, and I really started to work with vision therapy. And what I realized was that a lot of kids with developmental disabilities actually have visual perceptual issues as well, which really makes like the fine motor skills and the depth perception skills of something like wiping or toileting really challenging. So I was actually able to refine my like niche and really able to like learn skills to kind of tweak that stuff to make it even more manageable and even more successful for so many families. And then before I knew it, my private practice took off. And then I was able to expand, and now it's a group practice. We have art therapists, social workers, counselors, and we work with all different things from children, families, um, ADHD, mental health, self esteem, all the things in that bucket. And then I decided, you know what, I really need to help more families than just in therapy. And that's why I started potty training coaching. So that's my professional career. And then 2.5 years ago, I had my son, and we are in the midst of potty training as well. So I kind of have it on both ends.
Man, potty training at 2.5 would have been a dream.
It's, you think it would be, but it's a rough life because, like you guys, we're always on the go. So it's hard to potty train on the go. So it's kind of this ebb and flow, and you just got to roll with the punches and go with it.
Yeah, I'm sure a lot of autism parents out there can relate to me when I say I am so tired of paying for diapers.
Yes.
Oh, it costs a
Yeah.
fortune, and
Mhm.
I don't think it's that he doesn't want to be potty trained. I just think it's the processing's not there yet. So we're working on it. Maybe today I'll glean some information and tips out of you that I would normally have to pay hundreds of dollars for.
Yeah,
So,
definitely. That's the goal, right? I hope. I hope.
before before we get forward though, there were a couple of things that you had mentioned that I'd like to ask you about just for clarity. The first one is you mentioned little girls with Rett syndrome. What is that?
So, Rett syndrome is a developmental disability that's very rare, and it's only in girls because it is a chromosomal disorder. So, it basically male fetuses that have the Rett syndrome can't survive, so they're not born. Um, and what it is it's similar to autism. However, there are more muscular issues. Most of them are completely nonverbal. Many of them are in wheelchairs. They have a very low life expectancy. Um, so, there's very minimal research out there. So the more research that we can get, we would be better. But there is a genetic component there that they're starting to kind of figure out what is really happening and what really causes it.
Wow, so you really have like experience with the absolute like minimum disability to some pretty advanced stuff.
Yeah, completely. The spectrum of developmental disabilities is massive. Even right now, I currently run an adult developmentally delayed social skills groups for adults with developmental disabilities, from the spectrum to Down syndrome to all different things, and they range anywhere from 21. I think our oldest in the group is like 57 right now. So I've really seen the whole gamut, and I'm able to create plans based on the functioning of that individual. And that's the key, whether somebody is on the spectrum or has a developmental disability or is atypical. Like, we want to create a plan that works best for each and every individual and each and every family. Otherwise, it's not going to be successful.
Mm. Okay, and circling back to my comment about being tired of paying for diapers, and then you had also mentioned a 16-year-old boy who was still not able to use the bathroom on his own, and you successfully helped him. So I know a lot of parents out there, like I said before, and I see a lot of these posts in these groups where they're feeling uh, very dismayed and kind of emotionally desperate. I see a lot of them, they feel like failures and they're lost and they have no idea where to go forward. But, we have this person who was nearly an adult still not using the toilet. And you said that you successfully potty trained this individual. Can, just as a way to like kind of give people out there listening some hope in that range, can you kind of elucidate on that process in a little more detail for us?
Yeah. So I definitely don't want parents to feel hopeless. It's all a process, and that process could take, there's this myth of the 3-day method. It could take 3 days, which is like the miracle situation. And it could take, 3 years, and then it could take 30 years. There are some like adult clients that I'm working with now that are just learning these bathroom behaviors, and they're starting to become, kind of familiar with how to even wipe appropriately. So there's potty training and then there's potty independence. Um, so some people can be potty trained because they know how to go, that they have to go and it's time to go to the bathroom and they go and sit, but they're not independent in the potty or in the bathroom. So we really want to, the goal is ultimately like bathroom independence. And so that's where we want to go with this. But, really making the bathroom a fun place to be, a fun place to hang out. So with this 16-year-old boy, he actually had a classroom built into his home. And it was really amazing because uh, I was able to keep the classroom door open and keep the bathroom door open. And I was able to like basically do classroom type activities that were fun. Like we were making art, we were blowing bubbles, and we just ended up doing it all in the bathroom. And anytime I recognized any body language of possibly having to go, I'd be like, let's go right on the potty. And like, actually with him, I was like, let's go right on the toilet. I used age appropriate language with him. Um, and we would sit and at first I kind of set a timer and I marked like a reward. And every time his thing was car rides. So every time he sat for 3 minutes, he earned a check and he needed 5 checks to go on a car ride. So that was kind of how we managed it. Um, and then after that, after it got less uncomfortable, we were able to sit on the toilet for more than 2 minutes. We were able to do fun things on the toilet, and then act like bathroom bowel movements and peeing would just happen while he was naturally sitting, and he was able to recognize the feeling and the sensation paired with the sound of going in the bathroom. So there was a lot of ways I was able to make it fun. We would do dance parties while he was sitting on the toilet. We were coloring, we were using the tablet, we were watching shows, we were listening to music. We did a draft fantasy football team while he was on the toilet. I mean, all things that you could think of to make it enjoyable for him, we did while he was sitting there, and it was able to pair the two together. Now, it wasn't a short term process, it did take quite some time. But, after 6 months, he really got it. And then I actually created a vision plan, which was able to help him get control over like his hands and where they were going with what he was physically doing. And then he was really able to start learning how to wipe independently. And now he can go to the bathroom. He's an adult now, but he can go to the bathroom independently. And he doesn't need somebody in there with him to assist.
That's amazing. Like, because like I said, like for a lot of us out here who have autistic children, the whole process of potty training and getting it through their heads, and especially with ones that are partially verbal or nonverbal, and you know trying to figure out that communication and not knowing if they're understanding those sensations and trying to do all this guesswork, it can be very defeating sometimes.
Mhm.
And a lot of us just eventually just it takes the wind right out of our sails. And
Completely, completely. And the thing with a lot of individuals on the spectrum, I think more so than individuals with developmental disabilities, there's such a huge connection within the pain in the gut and the bowel movements and the ability to urinate. So I notice that, especially our nonverbal individuals, I mean, I don't have data to prove this, but I've just recognized this. Usually, when I start to see any type of self injurious behavior, that's an immediate sign that there is something going on in the gut, whether it's constipation or like feeling crampy or having gas. So, usually, anytime that happens, I usually prompt immediately for the bathroom, and I usually pair it with something really positive.
hey, while data is absolutely wonderful to have, a lot of us are so desperate that if anybody notices any kind of pattern, especially somebody in your position who works with so many different people, if you notice a pattern like that, we are 100% willing to try anything to to make that so it's like, all right, well, if you've seen this in the past, then maybe that's something all of us can kind of work with, and we're definitely willing to give stuff like that a shot. And I just have a couple follow-up questions here. And you had mentioned when you were working with this young man that you were using age appropriate language. And I'm wondering about the
Yes.
reasoning behind that. Is it because you were confident in his ability to comprehend that language? Or have you noticed in the past that when you use, like, say, your baby talking an older individual, like, are they feeling patronized? Is that something that they understand and are capable of feeling? Like, do they comprehend that sort of concept? Like, what's the logic behind that?
So, great question. So, even if they can't fully comprehend and digest it, they can understand that they are different than their same age peers. They recognize that things are different, and that's going to impact their self esteem. That's going to impact their confidence. That's going to impact their mental health across the board. So, there's a huge, huge correlation between how potty training goes and mental health. Um, and we really want to treat individuals with disabilities the same way we would treat their age appropriate peers. Now, if they have a hard time understanding the term or the word, of course, we want to, baby it down, but we want to use, appropriate language. We don't want to use baby talk. We don't want to use things that are going to make them feel, um, less than. We really want to boost that confidence, boost that self-esteem, and we can use age appropriate terminology and still say it in a way that really works for that individual. So I can use age appropriate language and sing it so that my clients on the spectrum who process sound and things through sound better understand what I'm saying, or I can say it to a rhythm to help them process it better. But it doesn't mean that I'm babying it down and making them feel less than or younger than they really need to be.
So it seems like you're really pairing like auditory and like other sensory stimuli with this idea of them being able to completely comprehend, basically what's being mocked or patronized, and keeping them like on track, and like success wise, you feel like you have a lot better of a success rate with those methods.
100%. There's actual data for like atypical individuals. If we use terms that are positive around potty training, like we're not downplay, or we're not making fun of the smell of poop, or we're not saying like that's gross or anything like that, we see a 3-month progression on potty training being faster than in individuals where we talk about poop being gross or saying it's stinky or something like that. So if we're praising the poop, like, wow, that was such a good poop, I'm so glad that you got that out of your belly, you feel great now, we're going to see them being potty trained faster. And it's the same thing with individuals who have developmental disabilities, but the time framing isn't the same. But we want to make them feel proud and confident about going to the bathroom. We want them to feel like that was a success. That's a good thing that those like toxins are out of our body. And, even if they can't understand the word toxins and what that means, they understand like that you can eat and that you can't eat. Even if for an individual with pica, they know that they shouldn't be eating that thing. They just can't control the sensory impulse to not eat that object. On most cases, in like 95% of cases, they know they're not supposed to be eating that thing.
Right, right. And it's really interesting. I was just talking with somebody recently about, the difference between, talking to the average, toddler to young child, and then talking to one who's on the spectrum. And it was really this whole like concept, like they don't really comprehend metaphor and sometimes humor and sarcasm, and they see things very black and white and very literal. And so like the point you made about saying like, "Oh, that poop is stinky," or "Ooh, that's gross," like that would just come across as just a straight up negative and kind of make them feel like that's not something they should be doing. Where the positive, like the cheering, "Oh, that's such a great poo you made there," would really reinforce that whole idea that, hey, this is a good thing and this is what you should be doing. Am I correct there?
Exactly. Exactly. And the gut is so correlated to the brain. I mean, I'm sure you've seen all the research out there. But when we're able to get, the gut moving appropriately, we see huge progress in children on the spectrum. And
Hmm.
actually, I have to say, this is like the complete opposite of your like atypical children, but children, when they're on the spectrum, when they have a fever, they tend to be able to function a little bit better because the fever actually is like helping the brain function a little bit more. So when they have a fever, or if they have a fever for a long period of time, that's a great time to push potty training type stuff because they're able to process it quicker and get that like positive like multiple successes in a row where then it kind of clicks a little bit faster for them. So for your average child, whenever they're sick or anything like that, I would never say to potty train and never have positive expectations for potty training. However, if your child's on the spectrum and you notice that they tend to do better when they have a fever, then that's a great time to push those potty training strategies.
Right. And you know what? Just to go right along with that, currently with my son, since he's been a bitty baby, we've been dealing with chronic constipation, and we recently just changed his pediatrician because we just got to the end of the line. Like the current pediatrician situation was just not adequate, and they just didn't have the experience we were looking for. And then the new pediatrician referred us to a GI doctor who is actually having us do a complete clean out on his system to get him more regulated. And then because a lot of our kids on the spectrum, they're either ARFID or they're just picky eaters in general, or it doesn't match the pattern right or something like that. And their diets really aren't phenomenal, and going to the bathroom is sometimes tricky. So just right along with what you said, like getting them regular and getting them on a pattern and a routine for using the potty seems to really be, paramount to their success in getting potty trained.
Exactly. And then if you can get them regular and you know their times, that's a great time just to sit them on the potty to do a task. Like for my son, I know 10:30 is like his time to go. Like yesterday we were in Kohl's and I just knew it. I was like, it's gonna happen in the shoe aisle. I just knew it. And it did, right? Like I just know, you just know their bodies. And if you know that's their time, that's the time to be at the potty, like having them do a pleasurable, fun activity, something they really enjoy so that they are guaranteed that success. And the more successes they get, the better their confidence is going to be, their self esteem is going to be, the more they're going to want to naturally do it themselves.
Interesting. Okay, and then to double back and ask you about something else you had mentioned, can you kind of elucidate a little bit on what exactly is a vision plan?
Okay, so vision therapy is very, um, it's very, not well known. It's like a kind of secret. A lot of actually professional athletes use vision therapy. And what it does is it helps the eyes work together. So, right now, if you take your finger and you hold it about a foot out from your nose, and you are looking at the tip of your finger. And if you cover one eye, you see your finger in one spot. And then if you move your hand to the other eye, your finger kind of moves, right? So what happens is each eye actually sees its own finger, and your brain is able to merge that and pair it, and that's how we get things in the middle. Well, a lot of individuals on the spectrum don't actually have the ability for their eyes to team objects and converge and make it one. So sometimes a lot of individuals on the spectrum see two of everything, or things are not in the right space where they actually are. And especially if a child's nonverbal or has a hard time communicating things, we don't even know that that's what's happening and that they can't see things. So that's why we see like clumsy behavior. They can't write in a straight line, poor balance, headaches, um, a lot of irritability, lack of confidence, um, inability to read. We see a lot of dyslexia type behaviors. We see them going to point to something and they miss it. They don't have those bilateral skills to do things like high fives and things like that. They can't tie their shoes. A lot of those things are actually cues that we have a visual disability. So wiping and self-care within the bathroom is really paired with being able to see clearly. We want to make sure we're actually wiping our butt. We want to, when girls hit puberty, we want to make sure we're actually cleaning appropriately. So a lot of the things that need to happen in the bathroom really are impacted by the vision. So a lot of the times I'll do things to help individuals strengthen their visual skills so that they are able to be successfully independent in the bathroom.
That's really interesting. And that's actually something I've never heard of before. And I'm willing to bet a lot of parents right now are sitting there like, I need to ask somebody about this later.
Yeah,
Um,
it's very rare. It would be a developmental optometrist or ophthalmologist who you'd want to see, not your regular eye doctor. So somebody can have 20/20 vision, but it doesn't mean that they have depth perception or are converging appropriately.
okay, everybody, you heard it out there. Developmental optometrist. That's a
Or
new word for me.
optometrist. Yep.
Sorry. That's a new word for me. I'm sure it's new for a lot of you guys too, because a lot of us, when we get our vision tested, we just figure we're going to go to somebody who does it like that. And we all know that sometimes it's really, really difficult, especially when our kids don't like to be touched or have things put on their face. So,
Mhm. Yeah, it's really hard. It's there are some really great tools that a lot of developmental optometrists are able to utilize, just even to tell if a child's colorblind, and they don't need the ability to be verbal or any of that. So, there are specialists out there who are able to really tell what's going on without having to really heighten those sensory things and set kids over the edge. They're really able to assess in kind of playful ways, which is great.
parents listening, I would advise you to look into this immediately and get yourself on what is probably going to be a waiting list. Because I'll tell you what, us autism parents, we know we know better than anybody about waiting on lists forever to get anything. So, you know, hop on that because, like I said, if that's news to me, that's probably news to a lot of people. That Joanna, thank you so much. That's phenomenal advice. And there's another follow up, something else you had mentioned when talking about potty training the 16-year-old boy. You had mentioned the giving him 5 checks, he gets a car ride, it's sort of reward system.
Mm-hmm.
Now, is a reward system during potty training something that we can rely on for like the large majority of children on the spectrum, or is this going to be case by case, or is it like try it and maybe it'll work for you? What can we expect with that, and like what are some like decent ideas for a reward system?
Great questions. So, it's really individualized. As parents, you guys know your kids better than anybody. So, like, first of all, there's no harm in trying and not succeeding, right? But second of all, follow your gut. If you know what motivates your child, like, let's go for it. Some kids, it's typical to potty train kids with M&Ms or candy. My child is not motivated by rewards. He's internally motivated. So for me, I know it's not going to work. Some kids are motivated by candy. Some kids are motivated by Xbox or iPad time. So utilize what you know your child is naturally motivated for. And if you go on my website, there under resources, there is a tab that says freebies, and I have 3 different potty training charts on there. And there's also visuals that you can print out and laminate. And I highly suggest you put those in your bathroom because it has the steps of the bathroom process, and there's only 4 of them, so it's not visually stimulating. Um, so just laminating it and having it in the bathrooms just starts getting that awareness, and kids are absorbing those things even if you think they're not. So just having it there and letting kids see it is a great first step. But there are 3 different charts that go along with those. And some of them are just checks, or they can earn a sticker or wherever that might be. But then there's one that it looks like a big, like, I guess like Candyland kind of path. And it's like 3 circles and then or a couple circles and then a treasure chest. So with that one, I suggest you do like small reinforcers, like whether it be a candy, 20 minutes of iPad time or whatever it may be, and then a big reward after 5 successes. So that is really for kids who need a lot of reinforcement. We want to do a lot of short-term rewards and then a big reward after so many attempts. And those are for kids who we think aren't going to really stay in the reward system. It's not motivating enough. So I would say do things that really, are short-term rewards. And then once they hit that big one, then you do a big reward. Now the big reward needs to be something that you give them immediately. It can't be like, okay, we're going to go for ice cream on Friday. That's a no-go. It needs to be something that you can stop what you're doing and go do immediately. So whether it be that you have trucks that are in the package and you have them hidden in your closet. Whether it might be, an ice cream party, and I don't care if it's 8 o'clock in the morning, you're throwing that ice cream party. Whether it may be, I have kids who will do it for bubbles. It really depends on what motivates your child. But make it a big reward, something that they don't always get, something that they love. And, it's not going to be something that you're going to judge yourself for giving them. But I don't care if your kid gets a lollipop at 8 o'clock in the morning if they've earned that big reward. Like, give it to them. They've earned it. You need to follow through as a parent. Otherwise, it's going to ruin the whole process.
Yeah, that falls back to the understanding that they're very literal people and they don't really see shades of gray very well. It's all black and white, and it's if I do this, I get this. If I don't do it, I don't get it. And then it'll just break trust if you don't provide that reward that they're used to getting.
Exactly.
There's like this really big thing that we talk about a lot, and I'm a very fortunate autism parent where I don't actually deal with this in some of the capacity that a lot of other parents do. But what do we do in the scenario where, we ask the kid, hey, do you need to go potty? Or, we kind of go, hey, let's go sit on the potty for a little bit. And they have an absolute autistic meltdown.
Great question. Okay, so we never want to say like, should we go or do you have to go? We just want to say, let's go sit on the potty. You always want to pair it with a positive if you know it's a non-preferred activity for your child. So you could say like, let's go sit on the potty. I have a surprise for you. Or if you know surprises freak your child out, you could say what they really like. Like, let's go sit on the potty and we can blow bubbles. Or let's go sit on the potty and you can have 10 minutes of iPad time. Or let's go sit on the potty and you can watch an episode of Go Dog Go. Or you want to pair it with a positive activity and give them something that they really enjoy. You don't want to ever ask them if they have to go because then that's opening up the avenue for the fight. Now, if they have the meltdown, it really is, your kid. But I would say if they're starting to melt down and go crazy over the potty, let it go because we don't want them to stimulate the potty with this negative feeling. We really want it to be a positive, fun experience. So if you say like, let's go to the potty and we can watch, I don't even know, we can watch Shark Dog on the potty and they lose it and they go nuts. Say like, okay, we're not going to do that right now. Let's relax. Let's calm down. We can do that another time and just move on because we don't want to associate the potty with these meltdowns. We don't want it to be a battle to get to the potty. The bathrooms can be really small. We don't want it to become a place of aggression. I don't want parents getting hit or injured. I don't want children getting hurt. It's just not worth it, right? So if this is always what's happening, then we really need to go back to pre-potty training skills. And pre-potty training skills are things like potty play and potty videos and potty books and maybe potty apps, depending on where your child is developmentally and on the spectrum. We want to make it go all the way back to like the pre-potty training stuff. So if it's happening every single time, go way, 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 way back to the basics. But if you can get them to sit and do something pleasurable on the potty, that's the best start.
Okay. And sort of hand in hand with that, sometimes with these kids, when we experience like a break in routine, because a lot of them are very regimented with their routines and their like internal clock knows when certain things are supposed to be going on and when certain things aren't. That sort of just that instant, like, hey, we're going to start doing this potty training thing, just that subtle change in routine is sometimes enough to give them like a full blown panic attack or anxiety, and their inability to communicate those feelings causes that sort of meltdown scenario. So, do you have any tips for how we can kind of ease into that routine change so that maybe that it minimizes the meltdown?
Great question. So, yes, and I would talk with your child's school or providers of care or anyone who's coming in to support you throughout the day and see where the transitions tend to be the least stressful and start with potty breaks or potty times there. Also, when they typically have a diaper change, is the best time to implement those changes anyway because they're used to those diaper changes, right? So, instead of a diaper change happening, in their room or somewhere else, make those diaper changes happen in the bathroom. And then you can start transitioning from the changing happening to the bathroom to before you would change them, have a sit, and just get used to being on the body. The other thing is if you want to give them like if they have a visual schedule for the day, start putting it on the visual schedule. You want to make it so that they're mentally prepared for it as soon as possible. um, and then also put not only the time they're sitting on the potty but the reward just for sitting on the potty on the visual schedule as well.
Awesome. And so you brought up school, and that made me kind of think along the lines because my son started kindergarten last year, and something that I struggled with a little bit was communicating the need for potty training um, with the school providers. And they have the teacher and the aides, and the classrooms are smaller, but it is a task for them to work with all these kids. And if you're attempting to get that routine established, and say over the summer, you're taking your kid to the bathroom right after every meal and then once in between each meal. So we're looking at 5 to 6 to 7 times a day, depending on when bedtime is. And you come into the school year and you express that to the school, but they're not able to accommodate that schedule and say they're only able to take them, once before recess and then once directly after lunch. And it kind of like subtracts one of those potty trips throughout the day. What can we do to kind of like work with those schools, or maybe if the school is just unable to accommodate, our routine that we had established over the summer? What can we do to kind of work with that so that we don't like mess the kid up or deliver the wrong
Mhm.
message or maybe screw up their routine?
Great question. So first, I'd always say it's the school's obligation to make sure your child can go to the bathroom at whenever they need to go to the bathroom, right? An atypical child, we're never going to say, no, you can't go to the bathroom. You need to hold it until this is done. Now, sometimes they might do that with, high school students, but they're not doing that with your 5, 6, 7 year olds, right? They don't want them to have accidents. So just because your child's on the spectrum and it takes more work, it doesn't mean they can ever refuse the bathroom to a child. So that's where you really want to get your school case managers involved. Make it part of the IEP or the 504. And if we're toilet training and having issues with the 504, we really need to be pushing and advocating that we have a full blown IEP and having a potty training plan written up in the IEP, and having a BCBA also on board with the plan for the potty training to get the staff and the aides actually doing what they really need to be doing. Because it's really a lot of psychoeducation for the aides within the classroom. So if we can make sure that is on point, you're going to see huge success transitioning it. And I would come at it from a really place of kindness. Like, I want to make it easier for you guys during the school day. So I want to get, Austin on the exact same potty training plan that you guys are going to have in September over the summer. So, what is it going to look like? What is his routine and day going to look like in September? So, we can really work and establish to have the same routine starting in June so that it's a smooth transition for him. And so it's less work for you guys. So, I would ask that, way back in April and really start preparing for that transition to the next school year months and months in advance. I think when you go at it in a positive way, the school is really receptive and they're like, oh, thank God, I really appreciate them even asking this question. But if they're not so positive and accommodating, definitely get your case managers, definitely get the BCBA involved. And talk about it because we cannot withhold the bathroom. That is, morally, ethically, completely inappropriate. And, every child, whenever you have to go, you got to go. It's not like this is a behavior. This is actually like a physical human body need.
Right, right, and that makes a lot of sense. And honestly, my son has an IEP, and I never thought of having like a potty training schedule established within the IEP. I didn't think that was a thing. I'm one of those parents who I was in a position, and it's one of the things that motivated me to start this podcast. And it's been mentioned on other episodes where my son was autistic. I don't have family with experience with autistic children. I didn't really have any friends who have autistic children, so I was just alone, and a lot of this stuff I'm flying by the seat of my pants and learning as I go. So I imagine there's a lot of other parents out there who didn't know that, like, hey, if it's not math, social studies, and reading, that we can put that into an IEP. So it's really nice to have that information.
Yeah. And, a lot of children on the spectrum, their classification for their IEP is autism. So you can really put anything that has to do with any part of their disability in that IEP. So whether it be that they need, to walk in the hallways prior to the bell ringing so that they're not overstimulated by other kids in the classroom, that can be in part of the IEP. Anything sensory can be part of the IEP. And one of the things I think is really important when potty training is sometimes the toilet paper can be very hard for individuals on the spectrum, especially school toilet paper, because it's like thin and it's hard to unravel, and like the ripping part can be weird, or even the toilet seat covers, if they have those paper toilet seat covers, that's a weird sensory thing. The sound of the toilet to flush it can be a really weird sensory overwhelming thing. So there really should be accommodations if your child has sensory needs also within the potty training plan, because the toilets at home are much quieter than public toilets. So, maybe we need headphones to help them flush the toilet. Maybe we don't have them flush the toilet and the aide flushes it for them. So those are really things that we should think about so that they can be successful in school and it not trigger and overstimulate them.
Wow, my again, I'm a little bit fortunate where, like, my son does have some sensory needs when it comes to that sort of thing. Uh, Fortunately for me, the more sound is around him, the better off he is to a point. He's not a big fan of super quiet unless he's completely overwhelmed, then he likes it. So, like, a lot of people, they can't have multiple sounds in a room, and or otherwise their kids freak out. So, like, that's a really good thought to have there when it comes to that sort of thing. So to kind of piggyback off of this, and now I'm going to enter the territory that I actually imagine a lot of neurotypical parents have to deal with. Family who has raised children in the past and has this preset way of thinking about how things should be done, especially when it comes to the realm of potty training, uh, putting the stress and their past experiences onto parents of these children with these disabilities. And when, like if a parent is coming to their mom or dad and just kind of like venting a little bit because they need someone to talk to about it, and instead of just listening, they're there like, well, you need to do this and you need to do that. Or if they come to the house and they see how you're handling that potty training situation, and they got to put their 2 cents in, and it's not always in a positive light, especially if the kid can see it. That can be very stressful for not only the parent but the child. How do we deal with those influences in our lives, and what do you think would be a good way of communicating to them that, hey, I'm on a completely different playing field than you ever were. So without seeing without bleh, I can talk today. Without coming across as combative.
Yeah, this is like such a hard question just in general with any life skill, not just potty training, right? But at the end of the day, if this is something that's going on all the time and you know this and it's causing anxiety within your family, within you, like we have to really reassess, do you guys need new boundaries with these family members, right? Do you need your own therapy for a place to discharge and vent this stuff versus venting to your family? Because that really might just be a much healthier situation for any parent just to start, versus turning to their family. The second thing is, find the education that you want your parent or caregiver or friends or family to have, and share this podcast with them before they come over, or share other resources. Even give them like pointers, like, hey, just want to let you know, we've established this with all the experts. We've talked with their OTPT, their school. Our potty training plan is going to look a lot different than other kids, and then just leave it like that. Don't leave it like an open conversation. Just wanted to give you a heads up. Our plan is going to look different. They're not going to be potty trained on the same wavelength. And then, you can end, you have the authority and ability to just end a conversation and not go into further discussion if you know it's going to be a trigger and not successful for your family. And I think that's really hard for a lot of people to know, that they don't have to answer everyone else's questions because they're family, but you really don't have to answer everyone else's questions, even if they're your family.
Right, right. And to piggyback off of that, all of us, we need a break from our kids once in a while. And we get like a aunt, uncle, grandma, grandpa to babysit for an evening so we can go out to dinner with just each other. How would we communicate the importance of them putting their views aside and following our routine rather than trusting their own experience?
Great question. So, we have those parents who we can teach what we're doing and tell them how to implement it, and this is what we're doing. And then we have those ones who are going to do what they want to do no matter what we say. And you just have to know what you're dealing with from the get-go. So, if you know that that's how your parent is, just let them do what they're going to do and let them deal with the consequences of it, or just don't have them watch your child during those times, and only have them, come see your child when you're home, and have a babysitter or somebody who's going to follow the plan the way you want it, when you are there. So it's kind of like a give take. There's no perfect all the time situation when it comes to potty training, right? Mom is going to do things a little bit differently than dad's going to do things, then differently than the school aide is going to do things. The goal is to have it as seamless and as consistent as possible. But at the end of the day, we're all different people. So we're all going to have, different ways we praise and different ways we do things, right? So we have to have some flexibility in there, and we don't want to have our kids rigid. So there has to be some flexibility in who those caretakers are and how things go. But if Grandma Sue is just going to make havoc about this whole thing, maybe then we just don't have her watch them for a hot minute until they are fully potty trained or potty independent, where they can go in independently and wipe. And that's just a natural consequence of that grandparent's personality. And we have to say, like, listen, we know that you really want to help us out. We really appreciate it. We love having you here, but having you here while we're doing potty training, and us not being here is a little bit hard right now. So just come over when we are home and spend as much time as you want, but we can at least be here for potty assistance or whatever it may be.
Fantastic. That's wonderful advice. And would you say that, with this, there needs to be flexibility concept? Do the children typically respond positively to that flexibility?
It really depends on each child. Like, some kids do great and some kids do horrible. And this is true for atypical kids too, right? So, for example, my son really needs the same potty seat in all the houses where he's potty training. So he goes to my mom's house. a few days a week after school, and I had to buy that same exact potty seat that we have at our house. Even though I had other ones, it wasn't the same one. So for him to be successful there, he needed the same potty seat in both houses. And that could be true or it could not be true. So it's really individualized for each kid. And you have to figure out like what works best for your kid and just go with it and praise those successes. And if you buy too many potty seats that don't fit, you buy too many potty seats that aren't the right fit. There's so much money as parents we spend that becomes a waste. Like, who cares if it's $30 on a potty seat or $30 here or there? It's all about finding what's the best fit for your kid. And you could have two kids, you could have identical twins, and they need completely different things.
Wow. Hey, that's also fantastic advice. So we've spent really the dominant time in this episode really discussing potty training, which I guarantee my listeners took everything. They probably have notebooks out and writing stuff down like, well, I need to remember this. Um, but I kind of want to pivot a little bit and for a little bit of time here, talk about like the other therapies that you offer, because I know you do far more than just potty training. You had mentioned you're a creative therapist. Can we kind of talk about some of that stuff and how that's relevant to these children?
Sure, sure. So I am a creative arts therapist. That's my trade. That's my passion. That's like the love of my life. And then I'm also a counselor. But creative arts therapy is a wonderful modality, and it's an ability to deal with mental health challenges and to really deal with a lot of those things in a nonverbal fashion. And we're able to utilize play and art materials and the process of art making to really communicate feelings and emotions in a nonverbal fashion. And sometimes we're able to take those things that we're not able to verbalize and we're able to express them in this nonverbal way where then we are able to establish verbal communication. So sometimes, especially children on the spectrum, they have feelings. It's just they don't know how to one identify the feelings. First of all, like they could. It's very hard for them to tell which feeling is which. Or even express the word of the feeling, or even identify what are like the symptoms of those feelings. So, if we're able to even just express the feelings that we're having or our thoughts behind a situation, we're able to build those like baby steps to be able to talk about feelings in an appropriate way. Um, and really establish what we need for ourselves in an appropriate way.
That's really interesting, and also something I'd never heard about. Listen, my son here, he's partially verbal, and with speech therapy, he has made leaps and bounds in the last year. And I'm actually confident he's going to be conversational in the next couple of years, which massive
Huge.
relief. And uh, there's a lot of parents out there who I know, wished and prayed for that sort of thing. We have, kids that are approaching adulthood who still can't communicate verbally, that is. So having this other option, because we all hear about, ASL and uh, like the, what do they call that? Like an image board, I think is what they call it, where they
Yeah,
like point a
or like
picture.
a Dynavox, or even using their tablet to communicate.
Yeah. So this alternate idea, it's sort of like an abstract method of communication. And it sounds like provided you learn how to uh, read and understand what they're doing through that, that might be like a really effective way of figuring out your kid's needs.
A 1,000%. So one of the things I think this is like the greatest example of the power of art therapy, is we're able to diagnose through artwork. And artwork is very subconscious, and we're able to see a lot of things through artwork that we would never know. It's kind of like that thought, if you think back in your psychology classes from college about Freud, right? A lot of, or even Jungian psychology, a lot of those subconscious thoughts come out through art. And I worked in hospice when I was an intern. And it really got to the point where, I couldn't stay in hospice any longer because through artwork, I was able to know when my patients were going to die. And it just became like such a predictable thing where the other staff who were not art therapists on our hospice team would say, like, Joanna, do we have enough workers on roll for that day based on how many people you think are going to die that day, so that we could be there and support the families. And it just got to be this point. I was like, this is wild that I know this from their artwork. And now we're making like scheduling decisions based off of it. I was like, it's too much. It's too much. And I really had to draw the line. So you can really see a lot subconsciously through artwork that nobody even knows it's happening. And, I think especially for our children who are nonverbal, but even for our children who are verbal on the spectrum, this idea of being depressed or being anxious or a lot of that doesn't even get talked about. It's more like, oh, they're just on the spectrum. It's a symptom of being on the spectrum. No, it doesn't necessarily mean it's a symptom of being on the spectrum. And, if a child's depressed or if a child's anxious, whether they're on the spectrum or not, there are so many things we can do to impact that and to change that for them. So, yes, being on the spectrum is a huge part of their life, but it doesn't need to stay that way. And not everything is a symptom of being on the spectrum.
Wow. Whew. That's honestly very thought provoking. I'm kind of like in my head about that right now. Um, we are coming close to time, and before we get into plugging the things you'd like to plug, I do like to end my episodes on really positive notes. So if you could give me maybe the top 3 victories for children that you've experienced while helping them, and then maybe a couple of your personal top victories in your line of work, that'd be great.
Hmm. This is a hard question. Oh, this is a really hard question. I think the story that we talked about uh, with my 16-year-old man my kiddo, who now is a full blown man, becoming fully potty trained was probably one of the biggest highlights of um, just my life, and helped me determine who I wanted to be as a human and really let me know, potty training is uh, it just gives way more than just potty training. It's not just this minimal developmental milestone. It's independence, it's self-esteem, it's confidence, it's all these things. So I think potty training him was definitely a huge victory in my life. I think for myself, uh, my personal victory was really, I think, becoming an art therapist. I think getting into grad school. So something I didn't share is that I have a learning disability. I have a visual disability. So we did that vision thing where we covered an eye, and I actually saw multiples growing up. So I was a child who had an IEP and was pulled out for resource rooms, and had a lot of disabilities that nobody really could figure out until I was almost done with middle school. So overcoming my own developmental like type disability and my visual impairment, and then being able to be, successful, becoming an honor student by the end of high school, and then going off to college and grad school was a huge accomplishment for me and my career. Um, and then even just opening a private practice and then growing it to a group private practice is an exceptional career victory um, for me. And to be able to help so many families is just like, this is my dream come true, is to be able to help as many families as possible. This was my whole mission. And then I kind of, that's why I'm coaching now, because it's like, wow, how can I make this mission even bigger and bigger and bigger to help as many families as possible? And then my biggest victory of all is definitely becoming a mom myself. So being a mom is like nothing else in the whole wide world. So I'm here for all the pain and all the hard stuff, but I'm also here for all the excitement and all the joys of being a mom and helping other moms through their mommying journey and dads through their parenting journey as well.
That's just beautiful. all those things. And, really becoming a parent, especially if it's your very first one, it really does just completely alter your perceptions and the way, like, even the way you deal with other people seems to be affected by it, because you have these little humans, and sometimes you're like, oh, I want to kill you, but I love you so much. And you learn like this like conflicting series of emotions, and then it just makes you softer, you know.
100%, 100%. It changes everything. It changes your whole perspective on, safety and money and love and what really matters at the end of the day.
It really does. All right, Joanna. I'd really like to give you a few moments here to plug whatever you want, maybe advertise for your practice, let people know where they can reach out to you.
Awesome. Okay, so if you need any information or you want some free resources for potty training, I have you covered. I have a free Facebook group where I do live trainings every other Wednesday, and there's a boatload that are pre-recorded on the Facebook group. It's the Puzzled Parents Unite, the potty training edition. So definitely check that out. There are tons of free tools, free trainings, free resources. Again, it's my mission to help as many families as possible. So check those out. And then you can also go on my website, thepuzzledparents.com. It's an S at the end of parents. And on there, you will find under resources, there are free resources with tons of potty training charts, 2 potty training guides. All the things are on there. So check that out. And you can even sign up to be on our email list to get more goodies and freebies. And then if you're interested in potty training coaching or even my potty training protocol, which is, a coaching class, and there's a lot of trainings and recordings on there, worksheets, all the things. And then you get me for several months to help successfully potty train your kiddo. We can set up a free call to go over all of that. And that's all through thepuzzledparents.com. And then if you're looking for therapy services and you are in the state of New Jersey, you can find me at floraandassociates.com. Both of those also have an Instagram account as well.
Absolutely wonderful. And you know what? Honestly, after our conversation today, anybody who's within that locality, I would definitely recommend going and see Joanna for all of your potty training needs.
Awesome. I appreciate
Right?
it. Yeah. And our coaching is virtual. So you can hit me up. We have clients all over the country. So
There you go, folks. If you really liked what we talked about today, there's an option for you, especially if you have more questions, because I guarantee you inside of an hour, we did not even scratch the surface on things that we can do. And honestly, everybody's kid's an individual. So when it comes down to something as serious as getting them using the potty, working with them on that individual level is going to be paramount to their success. That being said, Joanna, thank you so much for hanging out with me today. I really appreciate you coming on to the show and talking about these things and providing all the guidance you have.
awesome. Thank you so much for having me. And this has just been great. I've thoroughly enjoyed this, and I'm so glad for this podcast to take off.
Wonderful. Thank you so much. Thank you for tuning in to the Brighter Spectrum podcast. If you have any comments, questions, or stories to share, or if you'd like to be a guest on the show, feel free to reach out to me at brighterspectrumpodcast@gmail.com. I'd love to hear from you. Until next time, take care and keep shining a light on the journey of parenting.
Thank you for listening.